Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I am your host, Matt, and I'm joined by my friends Alex and Jem. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content, or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com.
So, today the three of us are going to have a bit of a getting to know you session. We've known each other for over 6 years now, and we know a huge amount about each other. But I find that even in longer relationships, there are massive icebergs worth of stuff that we don't know about each other because it's never come up. And so in this session, we're going to play 20 questions, but it's 20 ellipses, approximately questions. So we'll see how many questions we go through as we go. And yeah, so each of us have prepared a couple of questions. Some of them may be repeats. Some of them are specific only to the person we're talking to. And we'll see where we go. So to start off with, I'm going to spin a special spin the wheel, see who gets to go first. It spins and it spins. Where it lands, who knows? And it's me. I will be asking the first questions. Okay. So some of these questions are going to be probably longer form answers. Some will be quite quick. Alex, how tall is Tom?
He's just under 6 foot. I think he's like 5'11", I want to say. I'm not sure exactly. Even he doesn't know. I remember once he had to get me to measure him for a doctor's appointment or something. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to hold the tape measure on the floor. Yeah. It was a bit tricky, but I think we managed it in the end. But yeah, he's about just under 6 foot, 5'11", 5'10", 5. Yes.
You should have measured him lying down.
I know. That would have been easier, actually. I don't know why we didn't think of that.
I've just, he's, I found like there people who like often say they're, I think he's probably the only man on the planet who would have say, oh, I'm just slightly under 6 foot.
Daniel would also say it, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that might say something about them both, that they would admit to that.
That's good fun. So, light one to get started with. Either of you want to go first? Or I can spin the wheel.
No preference. Spin the wheel.
Spin
You can spin
the
the
wheel.
Let the fates
Let
decide.
the wheel decide.
Jem.
Okay. Well, I will go for one for you, Matt. Okay, this is a heavy one.
Okay.
I'm just going to dive straight in. Most of mine are quite heavy, actually. So, you once called Attack on Titan the best piece of art that you've ever experienced.
Yep.
So, this might be that might be the answer, but is there a show or a film or a book or a game that has genuinely changed you in some way, and how?
Yes. I'll start off with the first one that comes to mind, which is The Last of Us Part 2. That changed the way that I view violence as a gameplay element, because it's just so brutal and so aggressive, and the enemies going, oh no, Gloria, when you stab one of the women to death is quite something. I remember very clearly coming to the end of that and thinking, Jesus Christ, I felt like an accomplice to something that was just awful and deep and intense. So that's one thing. Elden Ring.
We did talk about that, didn't we? We talked about that in our when we were talking about the series, about how intense it was to to have that connection to the thing, I was just going to say to the things that you're killing, but to the people that you're killing. It's profound. Yeah. So Elden Ring.
Elden Ring. So that revolutionized so a lot of this, so I can come to it from a perspective as just a consumer, but then there are things that overlap with my creative ambitions and my creative side. So Attack on Titan is just every single element of a creative endeavor. It just is at the top of its game for it. And Last of Us Part 2, the top of its game in that new, really gritty, dark, violent, but also incredibly technical brilliance that it was. Elden Ring, the just sheer design of the world, how it looks. The gameplay could be terrible, the story could be non-existent, but just the way it looks is crazy. And then watching the lore channels about it and seeing this incredible universe that exists within it as well, it's just incredibly inspiring. I've just opened my Steam list, and I've got them into groups like horror and kids and etc. And I've got a list of about 30 legendary games. So in order to not go through every single one of those, I'll just choose one more, and that can be... It doesn't have to be the deepest thing. The Outer Worlds 2 recently. Just the sheer just caliber of the satirical writing in it is just spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. And I wrote down every single quote that I enjoyed as I came across it. And I've got this document with hundreds of quotes because it's so good. Yeah. And apart from that, I should have gone with non-game things. I'll just go. So the Iliad is the best thing I've ever read. If you want to get stuck into that, there's a audiobook version with Dan Stevens reading it. And the best translation I've found is Richard Lattimore, or Richmond Lattimore. So that's what I'd express with that. We need to do an entire episode on just that question, but
it's a heavy question. It's like a deep question. There's a lot to go into there, but yeah, absolutely.
There's also a question that can very easily be glossed over and going, oh, obviously we talk about games all the time. We must talk about that specifically. But one thing that is really that kind of question is really good for is to find what someone loves and then get them to talk about that. Because everyone has a thing that they might not necessarily talk about very much or explain very much. And if you ask them, what about that thing? And then go, oh, I'm really interested to know. And then when someone just goes like what I just did, and it can be about anything. And when you can get in touch with that really raw, I think art is the art that you like as a reflection of your soul. So that when that comes out, your soul to soul stuff. And that's the best kind of communications.
Absolutely.
Alex, do you want to go next?
Oh, indeed. Okay, I guess I'd better ask a Gemma question to start. Can you tell me about the most surprising place you've ever visited in the world?
Ooh. The most surprising place that I've ever visited in the world. Well, I've been to Thailand, and that's that was amazing, and there was a lot there that was interesting. But I think the most surprising place that I've ever visited was probably California. Was probably Los Angeles, because I went to Hollywood. So it was a really exciting trip because I went with my ex-husband, and before we were married, but we had a friend who was working for NASA, and
wow.
he invited us over to see the launch of the one of the Mars landers, which unfortunately didn't land. But we went over to see the launch. So we flew over, and we went to Florida and saw the launch, which was awesome, and yeah, just amazing. And then after that, we went over to California because he was working at the university in Los Angeles. So so we went there, and we stayed in Santa Monica, and we went to Hollywood, and we went to Universal Studios, and we did all of that. But I was really surprised by Hollywood, because Hollywood to the Brits is just this, like, oh, Hollywood, it's amazing. It's all glitz and glamour and everything. And actually, it was just really, really seedy and
Really?
yeah, a little bit dirty and very disappointing. It just really surprised me as a sort of experience. And Santa Monica was everything that you imagine it to be. There was people roller skating and running, and lots of beautiful people in very little clothes and all of that. It was exactly how you see it in the TV. And one of the things that was really funny was that we basically arrived, and we hadn't booked anywhere to stay. And somebody local, friend of our friend, sort of suggested a hotel, and they were like, "Oh, it's so quaint." You know how like the Americans talk about the UK as being, really quaint. They're like, "Oh, it's so quaint. It's so quaint, and it's just on the beach, and it's really nice." It was a motel, and it was a total dive. And this was I was still a student at this point, so I didn't have like really high standards. I have higher standards today, I think. And I was kind of like, no, we can't stay here. Anyway, we stayed for one night in this place because that was where we had stayed, and it was awful. And it completely changed my view of what Americans mean when they say something is quaint.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's a compliment.
It's like a backhand compliment to win or something. Like everywhere's so quaint.
So we ended up in this in this sort of high-rise hotel, which had a really good view of the beach. And I mean, it was quite a cheap hotel, but it did have a good view. And next to it was an empty car lot, basically. Like it had been a hotel, and they demolished it, and now it was being used for parking. And then on the other side of that, there was another fancy hotel. And I was looking out the window a couple of times while we were there, and there was just this old guy with a trolley full of bags, and basically his whole life in this supermarket trolley, just pushing it into this car lot where he obviously lived. And I was just really struck by this intensity between the rich-poor divide that was like out in the open in a way that it isn't in the UK. I do think it does exist here, but it's not as blatant as it was then. I don't know. I mean, that was in 2000, and I haven't been back since. So, so I don't know if things have changed, but I remember being really like, yeah, there is a conflict here. And so, yeah, I think that was probably the most surprising and, interesting place that I've been to.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, America's always been insane. And it's unlikely that I will ever choose to go there, unfortunately, because of it, because they're just
pretty full on.
They've been escalating hard over the last 25 years into their insanity. So I will admire their positive things from afar. Okay. I think it's me, and I will ask Jem. So recently, and I think fairly often, we were talking about how the topic came up of like it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to do anything. And I was wondering, you've got your gaming village here and your family village. What are some of your other villages that you have for other areas of your life?
Well, it's funny because one of my other villages is as a result of the Women's Equality Party, which is, of course, what brought us together. But in fact, two of my other villages are a direct result of that. So I have a local one because when I got involved in the Women's Equality Party, it was through a friend of mine, Lisa, who I didn't know her at the time. She put out a call saying, I'm setting up a local branch, and does anyone want to come along and maybe get involved? So Daniel and I and my mum actually all went along and took my daughter, and it was at the local library in our local city, and I'd gone along and I'd gone like, I will not agree to do anything because I was just really bad at signing up for things. And I was saying, I'm not going to agree to do anything. Anyway, we went along, and Daniel and Lisa's husband basically spent the time looking after the kids in the other room, and they got on really well. And then me and Lisa got on really well, and I came away having agreed to be the data manager for the local branch. So that hadn't worked very well. My mum was all involved, was all up for it as well. So basically, we just all managed to like dive headlong. And that initial meeting has spawned a whole like network of friends that I have through Lisa, because Lisa is like connected to a whole bunch of people that she knows on her street, and then they kind of all spider web out from there. And it's just so nice because I grew up in a very isolated house in a little village, so for me, that whole kind of like street community is something that I've always kind of hankered after but never had access to. So it was just really nice to kind of be welcomed into that group, and so they are the people that I see locally, and I saw them just the other weekend, and we all met up for a birthday party in the park, and it was like being 16 again, turning up to a birthday party in a park with tins of alcohol and all of that. But they're just such a nice group, and they have their arguments and they have their disagreements, but they are there for each other when it matters, and in a way that is just awe-inspiring. And then my other sort of group of friends is a group who I met through Caroline, who obviously is the person who kind of brought us all together through the Women's Equality Party, but she brought us together. And she is one of those people, much like Lisa, who brings people together, and she brought us together. And so she collected together, I think it was like it wasn't long after we started gaming the system. So I think maybe it was the end of 2020. So like Christmas 2020. And she was like, I'm getting a group of friends, female feminist friends together. And that group are just amazing. And we're all very different. We all have very different life experiences. Some of us are parents, some of us are not. We have quite a big age range between sort of the oldest and the youngest. Sadly, I'm in the upper edge of that, but it's so nice, and they're just lovely, and they're from all around the country. So I wouldn't have met these people. I wouldn't in my normal day-to-day life, and I will be forever grateful for both Caroline and Lisa for introducing me to such amazing, awesome, strong women. And I think it's also important to say that has also introduced me to a bunch of really nice guys, because most of them come with male partners or friends who are just fabulous. And, I think it's just they're just two really nice groups of people. So they're very important to me. And then I have friends from uni and things like that as well. So, but I'm always trying to bring my groups together. I'm trying to connect them all. And last Christmas, we had a party here at the house, and we did invite some of the group from Caroline's sort of side and some people from Worcester. And it was just really nice to get everyone together and just, and actually everyone did get on, because of course they did, because they're all fabulous people. So
yeah, there are the people like the Carolines and the Lisas who are like some people just have that quality that attracts people around them, and then they can be that focal point that like just groups form around. And I'm exactly the same in that I live I'm always the last bus stop at school, always at the arse end of nowhere. And when you grow up in that environment, it's incredibly hard to build communities and lasting relationships, just because you're always too far out of the way to even you can't just go, oh, well, my friends are on the street. I've got to take a taxi or drive or take a bus or whatever. But I think and then finding the people like Caroline's and the Lisas, that's a good place to start, because they'll just organically bring you together with things. So that's lovely. Alex, do you have a question?
Question for you, yes, Matt. It was a very exciting revelation to me that you studied classics at university. I'm sorry if you did tell me that when we first met. It seemed to have been deleted from my brain, and only very recently remembered. But my question is, what first sparked your interest in the ancient world as a whole? Because you and I have that in common, as I studied ancient history and Egyptology at university.
So I started off with Hercules, the film, masterpiece, video game, masterpiece. Then I think I went directly from that to... Oh, actually, there was an audio cassette of the Iliad and the Odyssey read by Tony Robinson. I remember that very, very clearly. So that was sort of that mix of that. Then there was a TV series called Rome in the early 2000s. Yes. That was just absolutely ahead of its time, masterpiece. Then I think it really picked up speed when I started playing God of War. That really cracked that open for me. But unfortunately, I had my interests. I had my strong interests, and my ambition has always been to do something artistic. And when I was young, I still do. It's part of my artistic repertoire now. But writing, I used to all I wanted to do was be a professional writer of some sort, and that is impossibly hard to get into any industry to write anything. That's just the nature of the industry. And then I liked the pieces of art that concerned themselves with the ancient past. But I didn't actually I didn't really care about the ancient past itself. I cared about the things that referenced the ancient past or were set in the ancient past. So my educational experience of university wasn't that was the least important thing about university to me. And And I wish, looking back now, I was utterly unprepared for the real world after school and then after university, throughout and after university as well. And it's only very, very recently that I'm sort of trying to get a grip on maybe what the world is. And I wish I could go back and we could do an entire episode about what we would go back and tell our younger selves. But I'd go back and say, get a technical... People make video games. No one ever told me that a job is video game creator. And if someone had just said that one sentence to me when I was 8, I would have gone, oh my God, how do I do that? And then I needed someone else to kind of go, oh yeah, I'd like to be a writer in video game writer. And then someone to come up to say, yeah, that's great, but that's going to be incredibly difficult to get. So you need to do a technical thing like programming or user interface or any number of the technical roles, and then that can be your way in to the door. Because Corey Barlog started in the first God of War development team as an artist, and now he's Corey Barlog, the narrative genius. And it wasn't until recently when I started finding my own way into the classics again, because in the past it felt very prescribed, as reading lists often can. And I just wasn't interested. Whereas now, coming to it from just an enjoying myself angle, finding the Iliad after being inspired by the Warhammer 40,000 books, because they write in this same epic fashion. And then reading the Iliad, I've read it 3 times in 2 different translations, and then I've listened to the audio book at least twice, and I've been memorizing my favorite Achilles speech recently. So my love for things is there. It's just it's very, very hard to, especially how when you're that young, to truly understand yourself and what matters to you, and how you can pursue that.
Completely.
So I'm happy to talk about classics, but only recent classics, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I remember when I was at, I think it was very early on in the first semester of the first year, we had a one lecture on careers, and they were like, you can either go back into academia, join a museum, or work somewhere else entirely because you're not going to get a job because it's too competitive and it's too low paid. So it was really gloomy outlook. We were like, where's this guy come from? Why is he just being so neggy all the time? But yeah, it was a pretty uninformative session, let's put it that way. So yeah, we didn't leave that feeling very confident in our choice of degree. It was a fun time.
What year was the first year of your course?
2010.
2010. Do you have student debt?
Yeah.
You do?
But not as much as some people. I got in just before they raised it.
Guess when I started.
When they raised it. Yeah.
First year ever.
Yeah.
Jem, do you have student debt?
I finished paying it off at Christmas.
Wow.
Great.
Last Christmas. Actually, my final one was March this year. So yeah, I finally finished it. And I did not have the crazy debt that you guys, because
I just pretend it doesn't exist. I think that's my way of managing it.
I mean, to be fair, for me, it didn't exist for such a long time because I didn't ever earn enough to.
No, I hadn't earned enough really. I've only just started earning enough to pay. But
I'm glad to have waved goodbye to that. But I know that there are people who are going to struggle to ever get to that point.
Sure.
My hope is that I'm nowhere near having the prospect of earning enough to start paying it back. And so my hope is that I won't do that for long enough for a socialist government to come in and abolish student debt. That's
Yes.
my long-term plan.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.